Morning. Welcome back to the Swing Shifts Hangout Habits. We hold these every week and we drop them Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This week, we are delighted to have Dr. Kristine Sickels talking about personal brand and what's your future story. We'll talk a little bit about her in a minute. First, we want to give you the heads up on some things that are coming. The Swing Shifts Accountability Program is kicking off in the spring. Spring is coming, and we are happy it's here. We have run these cohorts for the last 9 months, and they are a great way to jumpstart your job search process. And every participant has reported back how great it is to have a small community in a focused time frame. So if that's something that you feel you need, sign up now. You can go to the website. We have an on-demand workshop for LinkedIn and personal brand that's conducted by our partner Blueprint. And so that's available to you as well. And of course, our book, Back to Business, and our audiobook is an e-learning series is now available. If you're thinking about coming back after a break or looking to switch roles or careers, this is a great way to jumpstart your process. So those are some things here from the Swing Shift we want to make you aware of. But now, we really want to stop talking and let Dr. Kristine Sickels talk about what's your future story. She's founder of HerStory, which is a marketing agency which helps female founders grow their business and themselves. She's also co-founder of C-Suite. I love that name. The trusted partner to grow your business with great marketing. Dr. Sickels built her career at Newell Brands, where she worked on beloved consumer products, including Calphalon, Crock-Pot, Mr. Coffee, Breville, among others. And she also served in roles at both J. Peterman Company, where I'm sure she can talk about the catalog, and Eddie Bauer. So she's got an incredibly rich background in consumer and in brand, and we are delighted to have her here today. Kristine, welcome. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so you can start sharing yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to be with you ladies today. And let me just get started. So I'm Kristine, as mentioned, and I'm excited to be with you. I actually spent 20 years at Newell Brands and just recently jumped into entrepreneurship, which has been a lot of fun. And I am here to talk to you about what is your future story. And one of the things that I find that oftentimes we go through crisis, or there may be some tough times that happen in our life or in our career. And often we're not exactly sure what to do. And we potentially end up reacting instead of responding. And what I find is so powerful in our stories that if we think about what happened, what potentially could happen, but really more think about who we are and who we want to be in the world, in our lives, in our career, then we can write a different story maybe than a reactionary one. So let me just share with you an experience that I had that I think represents this really well. So I don't know how many of you are This Is Us fans out there, but I am a huge fan, and it's been out for a while, so I'm just warning you, there is a spoiler alert right here, but the story I'm going to tell you is a couple years old, so hopefully you've already seen what's happened here. But This Is Us is just such a fantastic show. And about 2 years ago now, I was getting ready to watch an episode. It was in February, a couple days before the Super Bowl. And if you watch the show, you know that this was the week that you were going to find out how Jack, which is America's favorite dad, you were going to learn how he dies. Now, that's not the spoiler alert, because you already knew based on the storyline that he was no longer alive. But this episode was going to be the one where you find out exactly what happened and how his life ended. And so I am just ready to snuggle up on the couch. I've got my favorite blanket. I have ice cream, tissues in hand. I am ready to see what happens with Jack. And so the story comes on, and here we go. Jack is making dinner for his family. Of course he is. Like, he's America's favorite dad. And he's making it in a slow cooker. But then all of a sudden, as the story goes on, you see that it has some sort of faulty switch, and it sets the kitchen on fire, and the entire kitchen is up in flames. And this is the end of Jack. And I am absolutely mortified. Now, you may be thinking, yes, I was mortified too. What a sad way for Jack to die. But I was mortified because at that time, I was actually leading the marketing team for the Crock-Pot brand. And I just watched our brand go up in flames along with Jack. Now, we were in a crisis. The next day, social media was on fire. You see all of these awful things being said about a very beloved and trusted brand. Sales tank now. Never again will I use my crock pot. It killed Jack. And also you see, behold, the murder weapon. I just threw away my crock pot. I mean, literally, this was just trending all over social media. And we absolutely had a crisis on our hands. We needed help. Now, I would tell you that this may seem like, oh, it's just a storyline, but when you start to see the people that watch the show and just love Jack so much, like, they were very upset with our brand and with our business that this happened. So we were in a crisis, but we were prepared. And that's what I want to talk about and how we can apply that to our lives. We also knew how to pivot. Like, we had to literally react fast to this particular issue and story. So we had to get creative. Well, one of the things that I am just really thankful for as we were in the midst of this really trying time for the brand from a marketing perspective is we had a plan. And let me explain a little bit about that. From a marketing perspective, one of the things that we had decided in our business is that we would have crisis management teams. Now, of course, none of us want to live in a crisis, but they happen. And so it's much better to have a plan and never go through a crisis than not to have a plan at all. So literally the very next day, we were able to pull the team together. I had a team from PR, from marketing, from communications, legal. This team was already in place and knew that if there was a crisis on our hands, that we would all get together and really work on how to solve it. And so immediately we knew exactly the people we wanted to engage in this discussion and ensure that we could immediately move forward on what we were going to do to change the narrative and the conversation that we were seeing all over social media, all over television. I mean, it was being talked about everywhere. The other thing that was really important in the context of this situation is that as a brand, the Crock-Pot brand, we knew already what we stood for. We were a very trusted brand. We had been in the marketplace at that time for over 40 years, and people trusted us in their homes. We brought families together around great food. We allowed families to not spend so much time cooking so that they could spend more time around the table. And so we knew how we could have a conversation in a very empathetic way, but also that we were trusted. And that was really important. Now, I will say the empathy piece is very critical to all of this, because initially, as we got the team together and we're talking about how do we want to really think about our response to this, there were some people who were like, well, you know, Jack, he's fake. He's not even a real person. Like, why do we even want to be talking about this? Like, we should just get out there and tell people, you know, he's a fake character and he, you know, we're a trusted brand and we're the experts. Like, we're safe. Don't worry about it. It's a fictional story. But if you go back and you really listen to all of the social sentiment that was out there and what people were saying, they were so upset that Jack had died. People were in tears, and so was I watching the show. And so we really needed to think about, what is Crock-Pot about? Well, we are about families. And so instead of just coming out with only our authority, we came out with a message of empathy. Actually, at the time, just so you know, Crock-Pot didn't even have a Twitter account or a social media handle that we could immediately start engaging, because most people went to our website or to our Facebook and Instagram to get recipes. They weren't looking to have a conversation with us day in and day out. So we immediately got out there and created a Twitter handle called Crock-Pot Cares, which is all about empathy. And we just said to people, you know what? We are so sad that Jack died too. And we just want you to know that, like, we care about you and your family, and let us tell you that we are safe, and then go into the authority discussion. So the reason I bring that up is that if we didn't know who we were as a brand or what we stood for, we could have been very reactionary and could have handled this really poorly. Like, either one, not said anything at all, or two, tried to take like a very, product focused discussion, and we would have missed out on the opportunity to show the empathy that we had as a brand, and the trust that we had built with families, and that we actually do care about them and want them to be healthy and safe. We also took action immediately. And that's one of the things that I would say, especially when there's any sort of crisis, that sometimes we can get paralyzed and just, we don't know what to do, so we don't do anything. And I think all of us have maybe seen examples of this in the midst of COVID. If you were sitting here a year ago taking a wait and see attitude and did nothing, you would be sitting for a year. And so the brands, the businesses, the humans who wanted to do great in the world and do good for others, they didn't know exactly maybe the right thing to do, but they knew who they were and what they stood for in the midst of a crisis, and they moved and took action. And that's exactly what we did with the Crock-Pot brand in this example. We immediately moved to creating the social media handle that I mentioned to you, but we also got out there and started over communicating in all of the areas that we could have conversations, whether it be on media, on social, on our website. But we also immediately went out and found advocates. And we did that by finding advocates actually within This Is Us. And I'll share a little bit more about how that played out later. So we had a really tough situation that we were in. But you know what? Disruption is not new. We see it everywhere in our lives. We see it with what's happened with the pandemic. We saw malls already being disrupted because of online shopping and subscription models. So disruption is going to happen. But what's most important about it is, if you have a crisis, of course, it could have turned out really badly for us, but we had a plan and we knew just how to respond. So with that, for all of us, I believe that life is either a series of events or it can be a story that you want to tell. And I would vote for the latter, rather than just let life happen to us, whether it be disruption or crisis or maybe bumps in the road, which we know will come and go and they will happen. How do we turn that into a story that we want to tell and a narrative that we control? So I think sometimes, we all look at our lives when we're younger and we put this goal or this North Star in front of us. I know I did that. I said, what are the things that I want to accomplish and achieve? And I'm a very, type A personality. So I just assume I put the goal in front of me and it's just going to be, I take step 1, step 2, and it's just a straight line to get there. And it's just a matter of, how hard I work and how fast till I get to the goal that I want to reach. But as I think we all reflect and know, life is messy. There's twists, there's turns. It doesn't mean that we can't accomplish our North Star, but life happens. And it's really about having that North Star in front of us, knowing where we want to be, but realizing that there could be some twists and turns along the way. And so how do we make sure we stay on that path? And I really believe that we can accomplish our goals and we can stay on that path, even in the midst of twists and turns, by owning our story and really making it intentional. How we live and show up to the world every single day. That is something that we can control. We may not be able to control the crisis, the disruption, the twists, the turns, but we absolutely can own our own story and own our narrative. So, how do we do that? Well, I believe we can write our story by crafting our own authentic personal brand. And there's a lot of talk out there about personal branding, and I love that. Like, I'm a marketer, so I absolutely love, the idea of a personal brand. But let me just take a step back for a second. I talked to you so much about what we did as a crockpot brand, how we had done so much kind of pre-planning on how we think about who we are, what we stand for, how we would react or respond in the midst of a crisis. And I just want to encourage every single one of you, encourage all of us, that we are way more important than any consumer brand or product that's out there. And companies will spend hours and days and rooms talking about branding and values and mission statements and investing all of this time. Yet often we don't take that time for ourselves. And I believe that if we just spend that time really thinking about who we are, who we want to be, how we show up to the world, it allows us to own our story and be really intentional about what we do. And it helps drive decision making in the midst when we have decisions to be made in front of us. So the framework that I like to use for personal branding has three parts. First is your mission. We'll talk about what that is and how you can think about it in your own life. Secondly, it's knowing what you stand for. What are the values that matter to you and that shape who you are? And lastly, what are you going to do about it? Now, I would tell you a lot of times when I look at personal branding, I see a good amount of 1 and 2. I don't always see 3. And this is how you make who you are and how you want to show up to the world actionable. And I have a framework that I think can be really helpful for you to think about it that way. By doing this, by crafting our own authentic personal brand, spending time on investing on who we are and who we want to be, it gives you the opportunity to use your story to respond and not react, just like I was talking about in the crockpot example. So have a plan. And for us, that's your personal brand. That's what a plan can look like. So first, let's talk about your mission. I like to think about your mission in a couple of different ways. First, what problem do you see in the world? What's something that keeps you up at night that you believe that, hey, if I could use my skills, my talents, the things that I know I'm good at, I would be able to make progress on helping solve that problem. And, some people have problems in their community that they want to solve. Other people see problems that it ties to their professional careers, like they want to help solve certain things within their industry. And in some instances, it might just be in your neighborhood. It doesn't really matter where the problem is that you see. What matters is that it's something that you're passionate about and that you want to step into. So the next thing I'd think about is, how can you help? What specifically makes you uniquely qualified to solve that particular problem that you're passionate about, that keeps you up at night? And then think about this. What would happen if you don't? What if you don't jump in? What if you don't take the time to really help think about how to solve something or to take that problem and make progress against it? If you don't show up and be a part of it, then will it get solved? Maybe it's you that is there to help bring, a new solution to the world or your community or your industry. I'll tell you a little bit about me and how this comes to life for me is that I love, with a passion, marketing. I'm also very passionate about women and women business owners. And as I was kind of looking around the world of entrepreneurship, I found that there are a lot of women who either one, just didn't have a lot of experience with marketing, but they had a great idea. They had a problem that they wanted to solve. Sometimes they had marketing people helping them, but they weren't really thinking about their specific voice and weren't being advocates for the women, female founders that I interacted with. And sometimes quite frankly, I saw big agencies or marketing firms kind of wasting female founders and small business owners' money. And I decided that for me, I love marketing. It's something that I know I'm uniquely good at. I love empowering women and being a part of helping them be successful. And so my mission is exactly what we said at the very beginning is I help female founders, female entrepreneurs grow their business with great marketing. And that's the problem that I want to solve in the world. What is that for you? You may have so many experiences that you bring to the world where you have a problem that you've identified that you want to solve. How do you frame that in a way that you can easily tell people what problem do you see and how can you uniquely solve it? So then you just put it all together. The problem you see in the world or your community or your sphere of influence, how can you uniquely help based on your skills and your talents? And what happens if you don't get involved? Like, what's the opportunity cost? And I really felt for me, if I didn't get involved, that women might be taken advantage of, or their businesses may not grow as big as they had the opportunity to be. And I wanted to be a part of helping solve that. Next, let's talk about what do you stand for? And I like to ask this question around how do you want to show up to the world every day? And that's a purposeful question. We can wake up and, kind of do life, or we can really wake up with intention and determine what are the things, the values that are really important to us that we want to exhibit each and every day. Another way to think about it is, what do you want to be famous for? And, I'm not saying that we're all going to be superstars, TikTok stars, social media influencers, but what do you want to be famous for? Meaning when someone spends an hour with you or a day with you, when they walk away, what is it that you want them to say? I spent time with her and wow, she was really this. I'll tell you some of the things that I decided for my own personal life that were really important to me. And this will help you think about the values that matter to you. We all grow up with different experiences. We have different life experience that shapes us, the values of our families or our guardians, that how we've, been growing up in the world. So a few things that I've identified and what I want to stand for, I'll just tell you a couple of them. One is I want to stand for candor. And I don't know how many of you out there are into Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 8. And that is always a little dicey as a woman because you can have a very, sort of direct personality, but I've just always known that it was something really important to me. And so as I lead teams, I decided very early on in my career that I wanted to tell people when things were great and I wanted to celebrate that. But I also wanted to tell people when things were tough and they weren't working or it wasn't good enough. Now, when I started to grow up in my career, and many of you, I'm sure, have this kind of tool or example that you may have experience with, I would get a 360 degree on my leadership style. And I can tell you without a doubt, every single time I would get, positive feedback around, I love how candid Kristine is. I know exactly where I stand with her. There's no misinterpretation, like it's very clear. And then on the negative side, I would get, I don't like how candid Kristine is. I wish she wouldn't be so straightforward in her communication. And all I can tell you with that is I was on brand because I stayed consistent with candidness mattering to me, knowing that sometimes it may not be other people's preference, but it was something that I valued as a leader, I value in my own life with feedback or in my professional life. And it was something that I just decided this matters to me. And I know that there are going to be people who celebrate it, but I'm also going to be okay with the fact that there are others that may not love it. And that's okay. And that is something that I would just encourage all of you to do is, not everything about us people are going to love. Some things people are going to love and celebrate, and there are going to be others who may not be their preference. We cannot please everyone. So let's really just think about why this value matters to us. And then let's just be really consistent living it out. Another value that I have in my personal life is curiosity. And that just means I love to learn. You might have seen I have the little doctor on my name, and that is because I am passionate about learning. And I just feel like by having different life experiences, educational experiences, it really helps me have a different view of the world. So I recommend you pick 2 or 3. What are, 2 or 3 things that you specifically want to bring to the world that you want to be famous for? But don't just write them down. What do they look like? How would you explain that? How would you live that out every day? And then also tell others, hey, I've decided these 3 characteristics or values, these are things that I would love for you to tell me. Am I exhibiting those, or did you engage with me and I didn't exhibit it? Maybe you've decided that fairness is something that really matters to you as a value. Well, then you should ask people, do you believe what I did in that situation, the decision I made? Was it fair? Was it unfair? Why do you think it was unfair? This ensures that you just don't write things down, but you're telling people around you who you know love and want to help you and encourage you. They'll be so willing to give feedback. And I would just say that with all of this, with your personal brand, find a few people in your life that you share this with after you go through it, and say, hey, I want you to help me like really ensure that I'm living this out and that you see me exhibiting the things that I tell you that matter to me. And if they're good pals, good colleagues, good fam, they will tell you in a loving way. We all should be open for feedback, and everybody that's in our circle, I know they want me to be successful. The people in your circle, they want you to be successful. And so all you have to do is just ask for feedback, and it'll help you course correct when you need to. We're not always going to get it right. And so having people in your life that you can communicate this to and that you trust, they will be so willing to encourage you on this path. Now, lastly, taking action, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do as we're creating our personal brand. It's not just about defining, what we want to solve and our mission in the world and how we do it, and then writing our values down and walking away. And I will tell you, that's my experience a lot of the time with companies. They'll spend all this time writing their mission, their vision, their values, and they go up on a wall or they go on a piece of paper and they get dusted off every once in a while. And half the time people don't even remember what they wrote down, and no action was taken. And this is where personal branding can be really powerful. Thinking about the problem you want to solve, how you uniquely can do it, the values you want to bring to the world, and then what are you going to do on a consistent basis to live that out? So as I think about that, and some questions I'd encourage you to challenge yourself with is, what are the daily behaviors or steps that you can take to live out your story? One of the other values that is really important to me is empowering others, especially females in their career. And I've decided that a daily or a step that I'll take, I actually do it more weekly, is that I will on a weekly basis reach out to a woman and ask her how she's doing, how's her professional career going, how can I help? And I have a network, I'll go to LinkedIn, or I'll think about the people that I used to work with or I've worked on projects on, and I'll just go down a list and purposefully take the time to reach out to other women to encourage them and see how they're doing. Now, if I didn't decide that that was something that's a part of my personal brand and who I wanted to be, I could be really, kind of nonchalant about it, do it every once in a while. But no, I have this actually written in my planner. Who are you going to reach out to this week? Put a name against it, and then send a quick text, send a message, send an email, send a message on LinkedIn. There's so many ways to do it. So that's just my example, but what are daily behaviors or steps that you can take to live out your story? And I'd really push all of us, like we all know we should drink more water and we should exercise, like those things are great. But specifically as it relates to your personal brand and how you want to show up to the world, what are those daily actions or behaviors that you can take? I'm telling you, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do as women, as leaders, as friends and family, is to purpose the actions that we want to take to live out the values that matter to us. So, 3 actions. What are 3 things that you can do to move your mission, your story, your personal brand forward? And then just put it all together. And actually, I can share this with you. We can give it to the group. I just have a small little card or PDF. It's basically a bookmark that you could do this exercise and then just keep it with you. I keep mine in a planner so that I am consistently looking at it and living it out every day. And it's not in a book or on a wall that needs to be dusted off once a year. I just am so passionate about stories. We all have a story to tell. Our past shapes who we are. And I just think when you think about the stories that you have in your life and the experiences that you have that define the problems you want to solve and the values you want to bring, well, they really bring clarity. These stories bring clarity to our past so that then we can write the future. Now, you may be wondering, let's get back to Crockpot. What happened? Well, I'd love to quickly share this video with you that based on the fact that as a brand, we had a plan, we knew who we were, what we stood for, and we immediately took action. Here's how it played out.
This week, there was an absolutely gut-wrenching episode of This Is Us. The father, Jack, turns off the family's old, janky crock pot. It shorts out, bursts into flames, and the house is incinerated. This Is Us fans were traumatized, and they turned their fury against their crock pots.
New at 10, crock pot controversy.
We have finally learned the cause of Jack Pearson's
Some viewers
death.
are actually throwing out
was
their
very
crock pots.
upsetting for a lot of people, like a lot of people, and in a big way.
This year, I think we should all take a deep breath, find the ability to forgive, and remind ourselves there is no difference so great we can't overcome it. I own a crock pot. I love crock pot.
housewarming gift. Oh my goodness. So it's going to go on that shelf. What?
I enjoy a good crock pot. I do.
I love it. Oops. So one of the things that was just really great about this, and I will tell you, it was a lot of work from a lot of people, long nights, legal calls. I mean, you just can't imagine everything that was involved to sort of pull off the things that you saw. But the very next week was the Super Bowl. And so This Is Us was going to be on after the Super Bowl. And we actually had, 7 or 10 days, it might've been 2 weeks until the Super Bowl came. And so we immediately reacted and were able to work with the This Is Us team. Because I will tell you, it wasn't their intent to really put our brand up in flames. And with that, this is just my favorite quote, that Crock-Pot is winning the Super Bowl without even having a commercial. We were all over social media. We had commercials that you saw that were, not really commercials. They were almost like public service announcements. And if any of you know, a Super Bowl commercial can cost up to $5 million, but we were able to get all the airtime in media. And it was all because of having a plan, knowing who we were and what we stood for and how we wanted to show up in the middle of this crisis, and then immediately responding to that with true action and not kind of twiddling our thumbs saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So a huge effort by a large group of people, but just a fun way to kind of cap off and finish that story. So with that, the future is really created. It sounds simple, but I just want us all to know that the future, what happens a day from now, weeks from now, it's all created by how we choose to live in the present. And how we choose to live can all be defined by really thinking about our personal brand. Stories bring meaning to our life, and living a life of meaning starts with your real story. And I know that each and every one of you have such a fantastic story, and we all can't wait to hear you tell it. So with that, I'll stop sharing and chat with you ladies.
Well, and Kristine, I think this is so on point right now. Millions of American women, and some men too, have been unexpectedly sent home because of the pandemic. And many, many, many people that we're talking to are thinking about changing what they're doing and where they're going. And so I think your advice about starting today and starting to do your work and think about, well, who you are, what's your mission, how do you want to represent yourself as you move forward? I think it's very timely. Have you talked with people who and companies who are working on that as a result of the pandemic right now?
I haven't, but I would also say I've even heard, even pre-pandemic, one of the things that I found, especially with women that I've chatted with in their careers, is this pivot point in life where potentially you define what success looks like. You have a title, how much you want to make, you have all of these things that you define, and you get there. And sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm got it, but I'm not sure I'm really doing what I want to do, or I'm living the values that I want to live, or I'm solving the problems that I want to solve. So I'm successful, but just the opportunity to kind of take a step back and say, is there an opportunity to not only have success, but align it with my personal values and what I want to stand for, especially with some reflection. So I've even pre-pandemic feel like people were having those conversations, but I do see now, to your point, all of a sudden there's so many disruptions that have happened in our life, and it causes us to think about things differently. Like, oh, do I want to live here if I don't have to, and where would I love to, put my home if I didn't have to have a commute every day? And I'm sure you guys have seen, like, so many people, they move, they make different choices. Sarah, I think you even did that. And so, yeah, I think this has been a time for reflection in that, but also because of remote work, it's allowing so much more flexibility to think about those things a little differently, maybe than in the past.
Right. Right. And I do think that experiences, many of us, we've all had these unique experiences that have occurred over the past year. I think that those are really important to incorporate into your story as you move forward. I mean, the temptation is to just say, well, it's this one-time thing. Well, it's a really long time.
No, for sure. And I mean, I tell people, like, and I've heard other people say this, like, I feel like all of us, we've learned a lot about ourselves in this year. I mean, there's so much opportunity for self-reflection, opportunity. I personally, I'm single, so I was alone a lot, and I filled my time with friends and family and events. And then all of a sudden, when you're kind of in your own space for long periods of time, then you start to go, do I like me? But yeah, so I just think we've all had the opportunity to probably do that more than we've ever had. And so how do you use that? It's not really about, COVID or the crisis, but how do you use the disruption to just self-reflect, and think about who you are and what you want to be and how you want to show up to the world. And I think this has been a good time to do that for sure.
And I think that that's a great way to think about that, because it happened to be this disruptive crisis. However, it's a great opportunity. Yes, Sarah, it looked like you were jumping in.
No, I was just thinking, we talk a lot about personal brand, and a lot of times we do it at a very tactical level. Just like, what are some things you can do to infuse your brand into your job search toolkit and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important to remind people that, like you said about company brands, like, they take years, and it takes a lot of time and, on yourself, introspection and understanding what is important to you now and how has that evolved even from last year or 2 years ago. And it's like, it's kind of like an ongoing process. Your brand is, right, all the time. And I think for some people, they feel like they have to figure it out and then, get it out into the world immediately, and then they're done, right? And it's It's not how it works.
Well, I think it's a great point. And I think the parallel to what companies do is important because, most companies, they're reviewing their brand every year, and they're definitely reviewing it every 3 years to say, like, is this still who we are? Is this the message that we want to share with the world? But if you think about the brands that you love, that all of us engage with and that, we really treasure, there has been a lot of time and investment put on that, thinking about those brands and defining who they are. And my sort of challenge to us women is we don't always invest in ourselves. We don't take that time to invest in ourselves. And I know I already said it, but we are way more important than any brand out there. We're humans. We have something to bring to the world. And sometimes I also believe, like, personal branding becomes like, what I said earlier, like, how do you become famous, or how do you become a social influencer, or whatever. And it's like, no. It's really more about, like, how do you show up in your own skin every day, at work, at home, with your family, your friends? Like, who do you want to be? And so I'm really passionate about, I call it authentic personal branding. It's not personal branding like put on a face, to, the world, but like, how do you really just bring who you are into every facet of your life? And I think of it as branding because I'm a marketer, right? And so like, that's kind of the language that I use. And then, yes, you can take it into all those other things, you know, your LinkedIn profiles, your resume, and we should do that. But I think it's good to start a little bit further back, and then you can infuse it. And then to your point, Sarah, you just constantly want to revisit and reflect, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think doing that, you know, the kind of worksheets that you had and writing that stuff down and seeing it every day. And for the record, if people are watching this after the fact, like Kristine does bring this. When we first met, everything you had said about this is what I want people to walk away from feeling or knowing about me, I did. I think I told it to Nancy. I said, he is amazing. This is, you know, what I learned. This is what I felt just after our, you know, 60-minute call. And so I think that's just really, it's really cool, right? Like it's living it. And
yeah, thank you for that. That's very, very
right.
kind.
And I think that's a really cogent point, is that we all, I think everybody aspires to doing that. You want what you care about and what you want to do to align.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Kristine,
Gosh, this was
Sickels,
fun. I love
this. Is so fun. Thank
the
you
ending
so
of
much.
that was so great about the whole
so
process.
fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. We literally had people with crockpot as innocent signs at the Today Show and Good Morning America, and you know, crockpots everywhere. So it's definitely a lot of fun, and I just think we can all encourage ourselves that like crisis is going to happen. We just lived through one. They'll happen again, but we have the opportunity to own the story if we just think about how we specifically and intentionally want to do it in the story we want to tell. So
yeah, and that is exactly what our community is going through every day. Their own crises, their own reasons for having to take a career break. And I think about this all the time, and you make sure you own it. You did those, made those choices for a reason. Now you don't need to feel shame or vulnerable about them. You own it, and then you move on, right? And you are prepared to talk about yourself in a way that is, you know, recruiters can understand, and your skills and all of that. So yeah, it's just so timely. I think people will get a lot out of this.
Great. Thanks, ladies.
All right. Oh, thank you so much. And hang on one sec. Our